54 points in front, so red and black.
50.
Plus him 61 in front with 59 on. The last 3 frames have been excellent. The previous 5 have been a little pedestrian, but these have been very good.
$51.
I know this black is for frame ball, so he might not risk the cannon on the 3 reds, may play for the red in baulk, but he shouldn't miss the black really. So he may decide to play the cannon. If he plays for the red in baulk, he's got to make sure he doesn't cannon into the brown. Because to get on that red in baulk, he just needs to just miss the brown. Well done. Frame ball, just make sure the red, and you know that your opponent's not going to come back to the table.
$59. Green ball.
Good shot, well played.
62.
World Snooker Champion John Higgins.
Hello, welcome to your Sunday tea time edition of Snooker Live. It's been another action-packed day here at the Crucible. The 2014 Dapperbet World Championship is warming up really nicely. Some very, very intriguing matches. There are 2 to resume tonight at 7 o'clock, locked together at 4-all. That's one of the reasons why we've been joined by this man, Chris Henry. He's now coach to Sean Murphy, but Chris has been coming here to the Crucible for, he doesn't look old enough for this, 32 years. So, God, you must have seen some unbelievable matches over the years, Chris.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like you say, 32 years. I've seen many matches over the years. Right back to Willie Thorne and Cliff Thorburn and Steve Davis. In fact, I actually saw Steve Davis win his first ever ranking title. That was in Preston, when he beat Alex Higgins back in 1980. So I've been a keen fan for many, many years. Obviously played the game, and now I'm coaching some of the world's top players, which is amazing. Yeah, well, we'll talk about Sean in a little bit. First of all, let's just wrap up how things have gone this afternoon. Judd Trump resumed 6-2 up against Ryan Day. Funny old session of snooker. Ryan pulled it back to 7-5 before Judd then took 3 towards the end of the session. Ryan took the last, but Judd takes a 10-6 lead over the pride of Pontycummer into their concluding session tomorrow night. So Judd's now only 3 away from another quarter-final, and that's going to be a tough deficit for Ryan to haul back, I think. Without a doubt. Obviously, Ryan has shown some very good form during this tournament. Judd, I can see him coming back into some very seriously good form, and I fully expect Judd to finish the job off. And how do you assess Judd's chances overall? Because by his own mercurial standards, he was very average against Tom Ford. I think he came through that one 10-8. So it's been a case of him having to warm up, and he's going to have to continue going in that direction because the matches are going to get harder and harder. Potentially, it's a Mark Allen or a Neil Robertson for him in the quarter-final. So whichever of those 2 players come through that tight match, he's going to have to step up again in the quarters if he can finish this off against Ryan. Absolutely. And if I was in Judd's camp, I'd be saying, same thing, same technical things. But for Judd, for me, it's a confidence issue. I think if he can really regain that level of self-confidence that he showed a few years ago, he's an absolute big threat to win this tournament.
So bearing that in mind, how important do you think it was, although he lost the final in Germany to Ding, getting back to a big showdown? That was probably quite important.
It is, it's very important, and it's important to get into those environments of finals and big events, and for me Judd Trump is a big match player, and getting back into that environment will generate a lot of self-confidence, and you can see that starting to seep through now.
Well, the other match that is literally just about to finish this afternoon, it's Dominic Dale against Michael Wasley. Wazza, remember, was the man who put Ding Junhui out in the first round in an amazing decider. He started this afternoon 7-1 down, and we can just see here Dominic Dale is about to wrap up the final session, the final frame of the session. He's on a big break here, and Wazza will come back. Well, with Dominic Dale only one frame away from booking his first appearance in a quarter-final in 14 years. Do you think maybe it was a case for Michael Wasley? I mean, he'll come out all guns blazing tomorrow afternoon, but do you think it was a case that winning against Ding just took too much out of him, mentally and almost physically? I
think so, yeah, and I believe he returned to home, which can be a good or a bad decision. Maybe it was better to stay in this environment and stay in this whole, you know, crucible buzz, if you like. Wonderful performance against Ding Junhui. Obviously Ding, a massively talented player, top player, currently in the top 2 or 3 ranked players in the world, won 5 ranking events this season. And for Michael Wasley to come to the crucible for the first time ever and put in that kind of performance against such an opponent, absolutely fantastic. And he's come out into this match here, the level has dropped dramatically, I think, from both players. I think they've both struggled a little bit. And one of the reasons I think for that is that they both feel they've got a massive chance to reach the quarterfinals of the World Championships. And so, you know, the level this afternoon hasn't been very high. It got a lot higher towards the end. Both players played a couple of very, very high standard frames. But I think the expectation of trying to get through to the quarterfinals has stumped them both a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the big things players have to contend with when they come here to the sport's spiritual home. It's the climax of a 32 event season that if they go to every event encompasses about 103,000 miles of travelling. This is a really big deal, and this event and this venue is steeped in the history of the very best players who've ever graced the game.
Sure, and you know, and to come here and with that sort of level of expectancy that you've got to come here and perform at your very best, is huge amounts of potential pressure if you let it go that direction. But I think what you just mentioned there, there's that many events now that players like Michael Wasley, whose comfort zones will be expanding, he's getting the opportunity to compete against top players in this kind of environment around the world. I think you're going to see a lot more examples of players like Michael Wasley reaching the final stages of tournaments next season.
Well, let's hope he can come out all guns blazing for their final session tomorrow. Now, we had some quite moving scenes here at the Crucible this afternoon. The middle Sunday is being called the Paul Hunter Tribute Day. Of course, the sad passing of Paul has been marked on many occasions, but what we now do here at the Crucible as a tradition in front of his parents is do a minute's applause before the afternoon session. The referees, Paul Collier, Leo Scullion, came out to pay their respects, and actually it was only supposed to be 1 minute, and the chairman of the WPBSA, Jason Ferguson, was timing it for me, and actually when the minute ran out and I picked up the microphone only a couple of minutes before the BBC went live at 2:30, the applause continued for quite some time. It's amazing and quite fitting that a player like Paul is remembered with such respect. The standing ovation from the crowd was quite emotional this afternoon, and it's really nice that his memory is maintained and sustained in such a positive, warm way.
No, absolutely. And you know, I knew Paul personally as a friend as well. I think the reason for this love of this man is that he's a very down-to-earth, genuine human being, a brilliant snooker player. You know, won the Masters on I think 3 occasions, and it's the manner in which he won those tournaments that sort of endeared him to a lot of people. And I think he would have gone on to become a world champion, and it's such a sad story, you know. It's incredible, and you can see that the response here to Paul Hunter, it's phenomenal.
Well, the one positive, of course, that's come out of Paul's passing is something that he put in place before he died, is the Paul Hunter Foundation. And someone you know very well, Chris Lovell, has been masterminding some fantastic work in all sorts of schools and projects to ensure that Paul's memory lives on in the right way. And the work that Chris and the team have been doing for the Paul Hunter Foundation is absolutely top class. We've had about 50 or 60 of them here at the Crucible today. Well, the middle Sunday here at the Crucible has become synonymous with the Paul Hunter Day, a great way to remember a wonderful, wonderful champion. Chris, you're at the helm of all the Paul Hunter activities. Just give a brief précis as to what's going on behind here. It looks as though Davis is rolling back the years in style against some young up-and-coming players.
Well, he's having a go at this 60-second challenge, Rob, which is something we use on the Paul Hunter sessions. It's actually a minute, as we know, and it's as many reds as you can pop in that, that allotted time, and it gives everybody a chance to play in some form of competitive snooker. But also behind me, it gives them a chance to play Steve Davis.
Well, I know he's been put off by some of the music. You can hear the Benny Hill tune in the background. We have the Jaws music as well. It's just great fun, this, and what an opportunity for these young lads to play a 6-time world champion and a really good bloke.
Yeah, absolutely, and he throws his heart and soul into everything that the foundation does. He's a patron now as well, and really it just falls in line with Paul Hunter's wishes, which was to get able-bodied, disadvantaged kids off the streets and play free snooker across the UK and Ireland.
And I didn't realise this until we spoke just a moment or two before the interview, that Paul actually set this up before he passed away.
Absolutely, and I think the vision was that people would donate, and when the money was gone, it was gone. We've been lucky enough in Paul's name to go out there and bid for different things, get funding. People have been so generous, and really the main thing is we put smiles on people's faces in Paul's name, and it was a great looking lad, as you can see, and we purposely used Paul's face on all our material to let people remember and show what a great lad he was.
And you've got about 50 or so youngsters who are going to be watching the live action this afternoon in the Crucible. Which clubs or what areas have they come from today? Because you couldn't invite everybody you've worked with, not to play Davis and to come and watch the action at the Crucible. So who have you chosen here for today and why?
Well, we've got various projects up and going around the country, and one of them is with the Young People's Service in Lancashire. So we've got a group from Skelmersdale coming here for the first time ever to see competitive or professional snooker, which is fantastic. We've also got 4 areas that have come together to play in a league, which has been won by the Golden Q, and that was an idea by Mukesh Palmer, working together with Lee Gorton, Garibaldi at Star Academy, Andrew Highfield. They've been competing in this league, which has been fantastic, because we've had competitive snooker for the first time ever. And that's been great, and together with that we've got the North Notts Snooker Junior Academy with Steve Malinder. So in total we've got about 80 people here today, with 50 of them going into the Crucible at 2:30 to remember Paul and watch some great action.
And what a way to mark your first occasion at the Crucible, the drive for the quarterfinals. It'll be Dominic Dale against Michael Wasley, and Judd Trump coming out against Ryan Day. It's a great lineup for their first live snooker.
Well, it's absolutely fantastic, and when you think about it, such a special place is the Crucible, and what we're trying to create within Q-Zone is that this is the home of grassroots snooker, and it's a privilege for the foundation to be here. The middle Sunday is always special, and even more special with Paul Hunter involved.
Couldn't have put it better myself. A great legacy for Paul. Brilliant work. Keep it up, and you never know, Davis might actually beat 1 or 2 of these kids. But he's not doing so at the moment. But I think he's letting them in with a few.
He is a little bit, but can I just say on behalf of all the team, a big thank you to everybody that says yes. We knock on a lot of doors and say, help. Can you make this happen? Can you do this? And there's been some big supporters, over the last few years, in particular the company I work for, Jim Harkness, Barry Hearn at World Snooker, Jason Ferguson, Steve Davis, Dennis Taylor, Sean Murphy. I could go on, but most of all, for everybody, it's a big thanks from all of us, because it does mean a lot, the support that we get. And again, thanks to you guys as well.
Steve, what a brilliant way to remember Paul, and what a great way to get the next generation of players enthusiastic about the game.
Yes, I mean the Paul Hunter Foundation has done a tremendous amount of work, and that combined with the sort of the Q-Zone into schools thing, we're trying to get as many kids to like the game as possible, and also to give them some free snooker if they're not in a position to be able to sort of play themselves and pay for themselves. But you can see, you bump into talent all over the place. All the lads that have played through have been fantastic, but of course, the star in a way would with a fantastic cue action, little Wesley. Obviously, they're all foul strokes because he hasn't got one foot on the floor. But that's beside the point. We can change the rules for that. It's just great to see a kid of that age playing at that standard. Marvellous.
It's a great way for Paul Hunter to be remembered, and what a touch of class from Steve Davis. He's got a lot of commitments here at the BBC, in the commentary box, in the studio, and yet he seemed to be quite enjoying himself over in the Winter Gardens earlier on. It was about 12 o'clock when we headed over there. He's got so much time for everybody, including the youngsters, and what an impact that must have on a young player who's maybe going down his club a couple of days a week, and then suddenly he can say to his mates, "Oh, I had a little knock around with Steve Davis." Amazing.
Absolutely, Steve Davis is the ultimate professional. He's an ambassador for the sport. I've been around the world watching Steve Davis in different tournaments, and what a perfect person to have in that situation. There is a little bit of pressure from Chris Lovell, pushing Steve forward with the foundation, but listen, he's amazing.
Right, let's now get round to talking about the great work that you've clearly done with Sean, because if we look at the whole package of Sean in terms of the fitness, the practice and the results coming to fruition. We've been hearing him in press conferences for a while say, everything's going great in practice, I'm getting to the semis, I need a breakthrough. So how significant was it, not only for him to get to the final in High Cow for the World Open, but to beat Selby and secure his 5th ranking title?
Absolutely, wonderful for Sean. That's the kind of win that can catapult you, if you like, with your self-belief, your self-confidence, your self-esteem, and I think these are the elements that he was lacking. Certainly the belief and the confidence weren't there, and it takes sometimes a win like that to redeem that level of confidence and belief. But it's actually, you've almost got to try and develop the levels of self-belief and confidence before you actually achieve that which you're trying to achieve. And there are some interesting mental things that we work on to try and almost trick the subconscious brain, where our beliefs are situated, into believing before we get there, and it seems to be working.
Well, also, it's fascinating to see that he hasn't necessarily gone on a huge diet. He's just changed the types of food that he's eaten, and he's gone on a fitness regime. For somebody, approaching 30, getting into their early 30s, to shed 3 stone without doing a gimmicky diet is quite significant. Do you think that will have helped the overall mental package when Sean arrives here at the Crucible, that he's probably physically in the best shape of his life?
There's no doubt about it, and it was one of the first questions that I asked him when we first started working together. Does your weight have an impact on your self-esteem, the way you feel about yourself? Generally, and of course that would carry over into snooker. So the answer to that was yes, and I said to him immediately, what are we going to do about that? Are you going to be interested in doing this, or are you going to be committed? And there's a big difference between being interested and being committed. He made a commitment, and he's followed through, and he's absolutely eating a lot more healthy food, lots more fruits and vegetables, less false carbohydrates, as I call them, and more food that generates natural energy. So it is a big change, and you can definitely say that it's helped him with his self-esteem and his self-confidence, because he feels better about himself.
Have you been surprised at just how determined he is? Because I know you've worked with some of the greats over the years, but he really does seem, Sean, as though he's got a very, very strong work ethic.
Well, you say that, and we looked at his work ethic back 12 months ago. It wasn't maybe as professional as it needed to be. We have made a few mechanical changes to his technique. Aesthetically, his technique looks beautiful. But actually, in terms of the mechanics and the results of striking a cue ball, they weren't maybe as effective as they needed to be. Those changes have taken place, and it's taken a while for those to kick in. It doesn't just take a few weeks to change a habit. It takes months and months and months of a lot of repetition. So that change has taken place now. And also, I see an improvement in his safety game, which is specifically what we've targeted, and I also see a huge improvement in his cue ball control. And so we've looked at the weaker areas of his game, if you like, and really focused and concentrated on making those stronger.
Fascinating match in progress between him and Marco Fu. It was almost inevitable that was going to be tight. It's 4-4. They're on stage again in, well, around about 35 minutes. We probably need to wrap this up fairly soon. It's a brilliant match between two guys who are in form. They've got a lot of respect for each other. It's tough to see who's coming out of this one.
Well, obviously, and I have to be careful not to be biased here. It's a fascinating match. They've both got a lot of experience here at the Crucible Theatre, so neither of them are afraid of this tournament and performing at the level that they need to perform at to win this match. I think it will come down to the long game. I think, you know, the long potting side of the game will be very important, and finishing frames off when you get the chances.
Okay, well, Chris, you've been very generous with your time. I know you probably want to go and have a word with Sean before the second session gets underway, so thanks ever so much for joining us. We might grab you again before the tournament ends. So, live action, 7 o'clock, the BBC. You have Sean the Magician Murphy locked together at 4 frames all with Marco Fu, who's back up into the world's top 8. It could be a very, very interesting session of snooker this evening. And, of course, Mark Allen and Neil Robertson also locked together at 4 all. Robbo's on 98th century breaks. Could he this evening do a ton of tons? Well, you'll have to tune in live on the BBC to find out. Thanks to Chris for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more Snooker Live. In the meantime, we'll see you out on the arena floor at this Snooker's home for more live action very shortly. The drive for the quarterfinals continues in earnest here at the Crucible. Bye-bye.